If we look at how medical studies have typically been done in the past, there are various ways that they can be done, but some of them include longitudinal analysis or cross-sectional studies. Longitudinal analysis has some limitations to it because it's difficult to track an individual throughout their lifetime. Cross-sectional, you might get a group of people that it might be a good mix and a good sample size, but it might also end up being a homogeneous group just because it self-selects for people who might be more curious or open to doing studies. Granted, until now, it's been great and it's helped us come up with so many insights as a society and help our health and wellness and well-being. But we're also finding out in this new era of personalized medicine that a lot of the studies that might apply to one specific group may not necessarily translate over to another group. So the way that that can translate to Fulcra is Fulcra allows you to have a longitudinal analysis of yourself. So if you see a study that has been completed either longitudinally or cross-sectionally, you can see and you can play around with the results of that in your own life and see how changing different parameters of your life will affect your well-being. In this case, for example, I could try, and I've been thinking about trying this with Fulcra, is like doing that fasting mimicking diet, and then through Oura Ring, for example, I might track stress indicators. So I think it's a very powerful tool because we can truly find personalization in this in a way that has never been done before.
Hello again. It's been an extraordinary month in the augmented life. I knew we were going to reach a lot of curious people, a lot of people enhancing their lives with technology, but I was still overwhelmed by the curiosity posed by everyone listening and their questions aimed at us. So we're going to run a special issue of the Augmented Life focused squarely on answering those inbound questions. Lead us off. I'm going to pose a question to you, Ash, perhaps the most asked question, certainly a timely issue. Google surprised, I think, many of us by changing their data retention policies for one of their most popular products, Google Maps. Everyone saving their location history to Google Maps, sometimes called Google Timeline, will no longer be able to save that data to the cloud. Ash, what's your perspective? What should people be doing if they want to keep this data?
So that's a really good question, Michael. We've seen a lot of instances of Google and other large tech companies changing their user data retention policies over the past couple of years. Google also got rid of a lot of inactive Gmail accounts last year, and we've seen a lot of other examples. And I think what's going on here is these large tech companies are kind of doing a cost-benefit analysis and realizing that both the cost of storing this data and also the potential liability of storing this data isn't really worth it when compared to the value they're getting from it in terms of, quite frankly, their ability to target ads against those users. So I think we'll see more of this. I think we will see companies reducing the scope of the data that they're willing to store for users over long periods of time. And that's actually one of the reasons that we built Fulcra. We can store location data. We put it in the user's control. We have a solution that allows the data that Google is no longer going to store to be stored in Fulcra. And we think it's incredibly important that users retain their own copy of this data because it's going to be very valuable in the future.
This next question is to Amna. Certainly, we've heard from listeners that they're reading medical studies, learning about new breakthroughs, wondering how they can apply the lessons learned to their own lives. How does Fulcra's approach to personal data collection and the subsequent analysis differ from what we see in those traditional medical studies? Are there unique insights individuals can gain from their own longitudinal data, or do they have to participate in a study?
Great question, Michael. Thank you. I would say if we look at how medical studies have typically been done in the past, there are various ways that they can be done, but some of them include longitudinal analysis or cross-sectional studies. And longitudinal analysis has some limitations to it because it's difficult to track an individual throughout their lifetime. Cross-sectional, you might get a group of people that it might be a good mix and a good sample size, but it might also end up being a homogeneous group just because it self-selects for people who might be more curious or open to doing studies. Not always the case, but and granted, until now, it's been great and it's helped us come up with so many insights as a society and help our health and wellness and well-being. But we're also finding now in this new era of personalized medicine that a lot of the studies that might apply to one specific group may not necessarily translate over to another group. So I was very fascinated and shocked because I love intermittent fasting and I do this thing called Prolon, and I'll do it's a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And I started telling some of my friends, and a lot of them started telling me, that there's been new studies done just on women, groups of women, that it actually damages different parts of your health, whether it's, I forgot the specifics, if it's hormonal or metabolic, but that can be looked up. So the way that can translate to Fulcra is Fulcra allows you to have a longitudinal analysis of yourself. So if you see a study that has been completed either longitudinally or cross-sectionally, you can see and you can play around with the results of that in your own life and see how changing different parameters of your life will affect your well-being. In this case, for example, I could try, and I've been thinking about trying this with Fulcra, is doing that fasting mimicking diet, and then through Oura Ring, for example, I might track stress indicators. So I think it's a very powerful tool because we can truly find personalization in this in a way that has never been done before. And then you can share it with your doctor. You might be able to opt into a research study in a privacy-sparing way. So it's just, I'm excited.
Thank you. All right, Diana, this next question's for you. For everyone who's listened to some of our content and now inspired to start optimizing their life with data, where do they begin? What's an easy first step?
Great. I'm a very strong believer in the notion that when you track, see, and reflect on something on a regular basis, you're making it possible for you to actively improve it. So if you pick one thing that's important to you, maybe something you want to improve upon, and start tracking it, you'll often find that you'll find the best ways to track something after doing some initial experimentation. There was a time when I was working with my coach, Melinda Cheenan, on living my life true to my essence and values. So I created just like an iOS shortcut automation that would launch a Google form in my mobile browser every day at 3 p.m. And I would get a notification on my phone. And then I would go in and rate how closely am I living true to my values from a scale of 1 to 10, and then write a short sentence about why in order to give it that number some context. Then at the end of the week, I would share that data with Melinda, and we would discuss my progress on our weekly call. And it also served as a really good reminder to be, true to my values and become more aware of myself over time. So now we're building features that can support this type of contextual data collection and sharing now with Fulcra. So you could potentially set up a mini experiment like this for yourself with our tools in the future.
All right, and I'm going to take this next question posed at us in various ways, which is, how can we control AI? And it's an important question. And I think in order to understand how we're going to possibly control AI, we have to understand the difference between AI's programmed functionality versus its emergent functionality. The most extraordinary thing about these modern transformers is the emergent properties that they show, which surprised even their creators. Now, if what we like about these large parameter models is the emergent behavior that they show, I don't think anyone is going to be able to control the models by trying to impose caps on what they can do. Trying to functionally control the models is almost certainly a dead end in terms of a practical control surface. A better control surface, one that I think each of us can individually apply, is to control what data the models have access to. So if we want an enduring control surface that gives us a sense of comfort over being able to ask a model for help, being able to receive assistance from one of these AI models, but nonetheless also be able to turn them off, what we need to do is grant them access to proprietary data, grant them access to private data that enables them to do those jobs, and also be able to revoke it. So however we do that granting, it needs to be a two-way knob. We need to be able to say, yes, you can access this information. And then we need to be able to change our mind later. So that means that there must be a logical separation between the intelligence, the model that's doing inference, the model that's taking action on our behalf, and the data, the private data that we allow them to access. If we ship all that data to the model so that they're inextricably bound up, that's a one-way trust decision. It can't be undone. But if we use the patterns of access control theory in order to provide these incredibly intelligent models with temporary permissions-based access, which comes from a different logical place, if the data is logically separated from the model, then that trust, the allowance of the model to access the data, is something that can be revoked. It can be turned off so you can change your mind. And being able to change your mind is, I believe, foundational to long-term stable trust relationships. All right, this next question, let's try something new. I'm going to pose it to Diana and Amna. What if you only have an iPhone? You're not wearing 12 different kinds of wearables. What can you do? What kinds of data can you gather? What are ways in which you can put your data stored Fulcra to use without already owning a dozen wearables?
There's quite a few things that we can gather from your phone. We'll get some high-level health data, including step counts. We can also gather information about what you're up to on your calendars and where your location. And if you're using a sleep app like Sleep Cycle, you could get high-level sleep data from detecting your sleep stages based off of the sound that it detects in the room. You can also use context, so you can track essentially anything that you want with our custom inputs feature. So if I wanted to track, for example, anxiety, I could input that, and every time I'm feeling that emotion, I can go into the app and track it, and then it'll add a little pin to my timeline, and I'll know at which times that I'm experiencing anxiety, and then I can compare it to the other things on the phone. So your calendar, what was I doing? Maybe I was in a particular meeting that was stressful, or I was in a location, maybe I was at the doctor's office and I was a little nervous. So you can still compare your data with even just the set that you get from just your phone.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would say that's one of the things that I love a lot about what we've built is you can have all of the wearables that you'd like. You don't need any at all if you don't need them. I really personally think the custom features input is really useful because while there might be an app that can track mood, there might be an app that tracks, for example, supplements. With ours, you can just have it in one screen and press go, 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 and it'll record. And like you mentioned, Diana, you'll be able to see it across your timeline, which is, if you haven't downloaded it right now, you should download it. Shameless plug, but so that you can see how everything aligns and what impacts what. Maybe it is, like I was talking about intermittent fasting earlier, if I'm taking a supplement to optimize that, or I'm taking MCT oil, I'll track that as well. And it kind of breaks us out of the limits. And what I mean by that is a lot of different companies nowadays are either focused on wellness, they're focused on productivity, they're focused on whatever it might be. And in this case, with what we've built, we can pull that. We don't have to just be wellness. We can do productivity. We can have calendar. We can have location. And it becomes such a powerful tool and really accessible and able to empower lots of people. Like, you don't have to be this amazing, person that is going to be spending all the money on wearables, but you could also be, maybe you're a student and you're in college and you want to understand your study habits. Like, there's just so much possibility and potential. So if you wanted to get started tracking that, that's available right now.
Nice. Now I think of myself as a very well-instrumented person. I have an Oura Ring. I have an Apple Watch. But it wasn't until I uploaded all of my data to Fulcra, our own product, that I learned to my surprise that I actually have years of step count data that just came from my phone. And it was always there. I was able to do a look back of several years worth of data and see changes in my daily activity it was always there, but I didn't know about it. It was just trapped in a silo. I didn't know about it until it was surfaced in my dashboard.
Yeah, it's so crazy because today we think that the only data that's available for us is the stuff that we can see. And there's all of these applications as well, even beyond the wearables that we're using, like Google Takeout as well might be something. Or if you're using another app, like a fitness or tracker app or nutrition, there might be just so much available that we just haven't.
Oh, yeah, good point. Right. All right. This next question, Ash, is to you. Putting on your prognostication cap, what do you see as the most significant shift in personal data and AI right now? And how do you envision this playing out over the next few years?
Well, I think no doubt the most significant thing that's happened recently in the realm of personal data and AI is Apple's announcement of their Apple Intelligence feature, which I think if we look at what they say it's going to do, Siri is going to have access to a lot of the apps and data on your phone, or at least a lot of the Apple data that's on your phone, and be able to do things based on that. And I think that's the continuation of a trend where we've seen basically every app and platform that has access to your data roll out some sort of AI-enabled feature that tries to speak to that data. But it's still fairly siloed, right? It's siloed to the data that's available on your phone. And it still remains within a closed environment and kind of outside of your control, and not in a place where you can decide where you would like to use that data in the future. I think what we will see happen over time is users will realize that this data it's been incredibly valuable for targeting ads against them for a long time, or parts of the data has been. But it's also going to be of incredible value to the user, which means that users will start to understand that keeping the data locked up on the various platforms means that they can't make full use of it. So we'll see people push to break the data out of the silos. And Siri is obviously going to have great capabilities, but it will still be a siloed platform. You won't be able to combine it with your PlayStation data or your Tesla data. Breaking the data out of the silos and putting it under the user's control means that they will be able to then connect it to the applications of their choice. And I think that will be a significant development over the next 5 years. Of course, the next 5 years in AI are fundamentally unpredictable, but I think it's fairly clear that people will want AI assistants, AI helpers that are truly helpful. And what's going to be necessary for those AI helpers to be truly helpful is access to personal contextual data.
All right, I'm going to take on the next question. We got a bunch of variations of people seeking advice. They care about their own privacy and security, and they're weighing a decision about whether to store their data in the cloud or leave it on a device. And I'm happy this question has landed with me, because before we started Fulcra, some of the people today on the Augmented Life worked fighting botnets at our company White Ops, now Human. And one of the reasons why botnets are such a problem affecting the internet in so many different ways is that successful botnets are made out of ordinary people's computers who have been infected with malware. Almost by definition, if you can run a botnet, a successful botnet doing, say, ad fraud, you have the ability to infect tens of thousands or more of computers with your malware in order to turn them into drones that are doing bad things in the background while their owners are completely unaware. And what this draws into focus is that the security boundaries of our personal computers are frankly not very good. People have been trying to make a computer that cannot be broken into for a very long time, and so far, none have succeeded. So when we think about staying secure and we think about the privacy of our data, implicitly trusting the personal security of your computer is not necessarily the safest thing to do. In fact, I'll go farther and say that if you're worried about, let's say, the compromise of your email account, it's incredibly difficult for an adversary to directly break into a major email provider, to directly compromise Google or Microsoft or Yahoo. It's substantially easier for an attacker to trick you into installing some malware on your own device. And so the way that your email is going to get compromised statistically is not that your email service provider is going to get compromised. It's that one of your computers that's logged in gets compromised. So in many ways, saving data locally, which might come from a distrust of the cloud, is less safe than your alternatives. There are security measures that we can employ in public and private clouds that are substantially more sophisticated than available to consumer-grade antivirus and consumer-grade security barriers that you can install in your laptop or other device. There's defense in depth that can be employed in the context of an enterprise security team protecting all of the infrastructure of their cloud. And a dedicated security team protecting cloud infrastructure can prevent more of a dedicated security team protecting an enterprise cloud environment can present a moving target to the adversary, where we're constantly layering in new defenses, new forms of detection, so that we can present a dynamic defense to a dynamic enemy. So, from our perspective at Fulcra, we're solving a problem for people that has been solved in the enterprise in the past. Most enterprises are multi-device, multi-platform, a mix of software as a service, cloud-provided services, as well as on-prem hardware. That used to be a very exotic condition that only applied to businesses, that did not apply to people back when a personal computer was a single thing that people owned. Today, we as ordinary people are often living multi-platform, multi-device lives with a mixture of services that come from the cloud and come from the devices that we own. But there is no data lake for consumers. There is no enterprise integration platform that ties all of this data together, at least not before Fulcra. And so in many ways, we've structured this business to provide enterprise best practices at last to consumers that want to tie their lives together. And that means also being able to offer enterprise-grade security solutions to those who really care about that. If you look at other great SaaS companies, I'm a big fan of GitLab. GitLab has a native cloud-based service, software as a service. You can sign up with a credit card, get the same kind of product as everybody else. But if you have special security needs, you can ask for a dedicated private instance. And that's actually normal in the enterprise world, where many people with extra privacy concerns can ask for a single tenant solution of cloud service. And that is the kind of option that historically has not been made available to consumers. And I think an increasingly large number of people do want that level of extra protection. And so we're committed to also providing those kinds of enterprise grade, high level services to the customers that want them. All right, next. This final question goes out to you, Amna. In the interactions that you're having with users, have you found people genuinely care about privacy, or is it more of a buzzword?
That's such an interesting question, because I feel like it's also a very complex question. There are certain groups of people that care a lot about their privacy, somewhat because it has become a buzzword, but also because it is a genuine problem that we're facing. There's a lot of private data that either gets leaked, or there's a lot of data about ourselves that companies, especially advertising companies, have about us. But then there's also the other set of people who, when they understand how much data is already available out there about oneself, they just say, I don't care. They're like, okay, I'm just going to make it worth it for myself, because if a corporation's using it, I may as well be using it to make myself better and focus on my goals. So there's that piece of it. Then there's the other piece where people are genuinely concerned about their privacy, and both viewpoints are very important to keep in mind. And I think we've kept that in mind, especially as we've built Fulcra, because we made sure from the ground up to incorporate this this privacy aspect and making sure that our users feel empowered. So I'd say a mix of both.
I have seen some misleading privacy claims, especially in AI agent spaces and in open source AI. You see this promise again and again. It's an attempt at a promise of privacy, but the way it's formulated is your data never leaves your device. Listen, your data never leaves your device is not a security promise. In fact, it's the reason why ransomware is a profitable crime. Thank you, Ash, Amna, Diana. I had a great time with these questions. Thanks to everyone who sent in questions. Please keep them coming in whatever channel you listen to The Augmented Life. I hope you enjoyed very good advice on display here, and we hope to continue reaching curious people, curious about living the augmented life. Until next time.